Hey, everybody. Welcome to another installment of Wellness Wednesdays. Glad you're with me. Man, it's going to be a super
Hey
fun.
everybody,
Oh,
welcome
let
to
me turn my
another.
other device off. Uh, I'm glad you guys are with me for another installment of Wellness Wednesdays. I think this is going to be a really important conversation on tonight. If this is your first time joining us, let me first introduce myself. My name is James Perkins. I'm a therapist and a coach, and I'm glad that you're here. As you're coming on in, please let us know where you're chiming in from, city and state. Love to shout you out. And then also, if you know of a parent tonight, want you to share this broadcast with them. This conversation is definitely going to be beneficial as we talk about managing self care on tonight for parents entering into a new school year. So I'm excited to begin this conversation and have a very special return guest on tonight with me, and I'll introduce her very shortly. But again, as you're coming on in, let me know city and state where you're chiming in from, and then also share if you care. Share if you care. And so I'm glad that you guys are here with me. I'm going to share on my end. Perfect. Awesome. And so, thanks again for tuning in for Wellness Wednesdays. We do this every Wednesday. And the reason we do Wellness Wednesdays is for one primary reason that your mental and emotional wellness is a priority. Your wellness, your mental and emotional wellness really determines all the decisions that you make each and every day, pretty much each and every moment, to be honest with you. And our decisions inevitably lead us to help us accomplish our goals and maximize our potential. And our if we have a good understanding of how our thoughts and our emotions impact our decisions, then we have a great chance to direct our thoughts and manage our emotions so that they actually lead us to where we want to go, not where they want us to go. And so I'm excited that you guys are here with me tonight. Again, if you're tuning in for the very first time, let me know where you're chiming in from, city and state. Love to shout you out. And then again, share this with your network. So tonight, we have a very special guest, my dear friend, Celeste, the therapist. She's going to come on and we're going to have a conversation tonight specifically about managing your self care as a parent. Um, as you may well be aware of, if you're not living under a rock, we are living in the COVID-19 pandemic. And so, what that means for us is in this upcoming school year, as parents, is that for most states, our kids will be at home. Now, granted, for some of us, our kids may have already been at home if you've been homeschooling, but for a good majority of parents, this will be definitely a new dynamic, a new season that they're entering in. And so I thought as we prepare to enter the school year, what better way to kind of help prepare our minds and expectations as parents than to have my dear friend Celeste come on and talk about managing your self care as a parent. Look, let me be the first to tell you self care is so important. We have been, and I only have one kid. Our guest tonight, let her introduce herself. She has four, so I probably should be complaining. But as a matter of fact, while am I talking on? I'm just gonna bring her on and let's just let her introduce herself. Celeste, how are we doing, sister?
I'm good. How are you?
I am well tonight. Look, I was over here about to start complaining. I'm like, y'all, people that come and hear me to vent. But if you're on my broadcast, I may vent from time to time. It's therapeutic. You know, I'm a therapist. I have to
Yeah,
let
yeah,
my
yeah.
emotions and feelings out. And and so I've been managing. Me and my wife have been managing a um, 4-year old who'll be 5 since March. And to be honest, man, he actually treats me like a substitute teacher. Um, and he gives. Now this is funny, Celeste. Sometimes when I'm trying to do work with him, he's like, "No, mommy is going to help me do it," and I'm like, that kind of hurts my feelings a little bit. But I'm like, you know what? Okay, all right. If you want to play that game, or if he just wants to play, he'll try to convince me to say, let's watch Disney Plus. I'm like, nah, bro, we
Get you
gotta
in
learn
trouble.
something. Yes, you're trying to get me in trouble. I got a boss too. And but I'm glad that you're on again.
I'm glad to be here.
Awesome, man. And so we always have fun. And I've introduced you before. I'll have you introduce yourself. Tell us what you do, and a little bit about your family background and what it's like for you as a parent as well.
So thank you for having me. I'm grateful to be here. I always enjoy talking to you. So my name is Celeste. I'm a therapist. I'm from Boston, Mass. I have a private practice, and it's completely online. I actually went online completely in January 2020, full time. And so I'm married. I've been married for since 2008. I can't do the math. Almost 12 years. and and we have 4 children. 17, 16. I had to think about it. So many.
The whole tribe.
17, 16, 9, and 7. And our oldest 2 boys, we adopted them when they were 5 and 8. Man. And so it's been over 10 years, and the oldest 2 are special needs, one's autistic. So I have a pretty dynamic crew.
Yes. That's definitely, you have them all over the place.
Yeah.
And so that's unique. If you were to look back even at the start, because I think it's, kind of started middle March. What has been the biggest shift as far as your normal routine at home with having the kids?
So a lot mind shifting had to take place. I had 4 kids. They were in 3 different schools.
Wow. Okay.
And so COVID happens, and now I'm dealing with 3 different schools, 4 different email sets, right? Because they have different teachers. And so I had this grandiose plan that we're going to have this schedule, and it's going to be fine. We're going to do this at this time and that at that time. So I had to X that out, because I'm not a teacher by trade. So I had to let some of my expectations go. And some of my guilt around, not having enough learning time. Right. So I think that was the biggest shift for me at the beginning, is being mindful of my emotions, of the capabilities. And I had to remind myself, Celeste, you're in the middle of a pandemic, right? Yes. It's okay, as long as they're still breathing and they're not screaming at each other, it's okay.
Yeah. And actually, it's funny, I want to lean into that for a little bit. You said something that's probably that's really going to dictate how we parent, and for the foreseeable future is expectations. I mean, as soon as you said it, I was like, yeah, expectations is it. And managing expectations, I think 2 things you said that I think were important, and hopefully parents listening tonight would be encouraged by that. You say you have to kind of manage your own guilt about amount of learning, but also realize that by trade you're not a teacher.
Yeah.
And so my wife, she taught high school English for about 15 years, and so that's still even different than teaching preschoolers. And so I always joke with her, and I'm like, man, you still had an upper hand on me. I with Avery, I know this stuff, but knowing it and teaching it,
it's 2 different things.
Yeah. And so I guess one of the first questions that I would ask is, how did you even do that, kind of manage your own guilt and manage your own expectations? What does it look like kind of practically for somebody on a kind of a moment to moment basis, where, some of those emotions kind of show up unannounced, and you're like, dang, where did that come from?
Yeah. I mean, so I feel like I'm unique in the sense of, this is these are things that I teach around emotions. I've lived now where I've normalized my emotions. So whether it's shame, guilt, or fear,
Yeah.
depression, anxiety, for me, I can say it and I'm okay with it. I've normalized it. So for me, I'm already in tune with that guilt, and I'm not
Mm.
led by guilt, right? I'm not led by
Yeah.
shame. So for the average person that may not be in touch with their selves, or don't feel like
Mhm.
they have a hold over it,
Yeah.
I think like the first step really would be to acknowledge what you're feeling,
That's
right?
good.
And that's whether we're talking about parenting around
Mhm.
the school system in fall, or in general with anything, like recognizing that emotion is going to be a major key to your being able to like excel.
Yeah, man, that's perfect.
Hmm.
Normalizing our emotions. Um, I was reading, it had to be, man, it's been a couple of months now. Um, and it was saying one of the reasons that we have such a hard time normalizing and acknowledging our emotions is because we've labeled them as
Bad.
positive.
Yep.
Yeah, positive and negative, when
Hmm.
emotions are neutral. They're just
That's emotion.
emotions.
Yep.
uh, I think one researcher described it as, emotions are really data. They kind of give us an indication of what's going on the inside, and it's really up to us to determine what we're going to do with that emotion after we feel it and experience it.
Yeah, and I don't want to get too off topic, but culture plays a huge role in whether or not we're going to be that person as an adult to normalize it. A lot, like I grew up in a home where if you're not bleeding, you're not sad, or there's nothing. If you
Mm,
have food on your
yeah,
table and clothes on your back, you should be fine. And so when you grow up with that kind of mentality, why wouldn't you, as you get older, try to smother those emotions or pretend they're not there? So just for people that may be struggling with that piece, a lot of it is just growing up in a certain system.
yeah, that's
Mhm.
good. That's good. What are some indications for you? And as you obviously you have your own clients, as you listen and talk with them, what are some of the indicators for you, or kind of red flags that said, hey, I need to step back and manage my self care? What are those things that kind of, I guess, show up that indicate to you that, okay, I need to step back and
Mhm.
reset before I leave these kids on the street or outside
Mhm.
uh, with the door locked.
Yeah, and I know this episode is kind of dedicated to the parents, and I think for parents, I think we are so on autopilot. We try to do,
Mhm. Yeah.
provide, and we're so hyper focused on our kids, and when we do that, we are missing out on ourselves. Some of
Mm.
the indicators and triggers are, that explosion, the feeling as if you don't have control over your emotions, like you feel like you're snapping, and then you feel guilty after that.
Yeah.
You don't have to get to that point of snapping before you can. You don't have to get to the point of feeling like you're exploding. So, like, I have a sanitizer bottle in my hand, and it's like, maybe 30% full. And if the
Mhm.
sanitizer was all of the things that we were struggling with,
Yeah.
what typically happens with us as parents is that we just pile on, right? Because we're in survival mode. And so if I'm
Mm.
piling on, and this bottle fills up, it's gonna have to leak out, and that leaking out looks like lack of control. So
Yeah.
that lack of control, that your body, paying attention to how your body responds. A
Mhm.
lot of times our body will respond before logic hits. We may not understand what's happening,
So
but our
true.
body is trying to indicate to us, like, listen, Celeste, there's something going on. You need to pay attention to it, and check yourself. And also relationships, right? Whether they're
Yeah.
platonic, whatever, work, family, social, relationships suffer when we are not checking in with ourselves. So, I would challenge people to make it like a muscle that they're building when it comes to
Mm.
trying to check in with themselves, and not just doing it when you feel like you're exploding, but just making it a part of your everyday routine.
Oh man, that's good. Um, One of my mentors, Pete Scazzero, always says, and you just echoed that unprocessed emotions don't die; they just leak out into other areas of our life. And I thought what you said was great in that, um, keep pushing your emotions down at some point. They have to go somewhere.
They have to.
Like, they have to, and they're going to leak out, as you said, in ways that sometimes we just didn't anticipate.
And sometimes they actually stay inside, right? Some
Mm,
people have some medical conditions that are a direct link to their stressors.
yes.
And a lot of times we're just taking the meds, or the doctors don't know why, but we really need to look at the way that we're living our lives and how much stressors that we have in our life that are being unattended to.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, for so this school will probably start another 2 weeks. Um, what are some conversations for those of us? Because we have, and I'll do the first question for us. For those of us who are married and have children, what do you think are possibly some important conversations we need to have with our spouse before the school year starts,
Hmm.
to prep us for managing our self care and just kind of really having really realistic expectations before the school year starts?
Yeah, this lately, my spirit's been breaking because I feel like we're going to be on lockdown again, and we're going to be on lockdown, in the winter or darker season before it was,
Mhm.
the beginning of spring. So even though it was hard, it wasn't as complicated, depending
Yeah.
on what state you live in, right?
Hmm.
So if you're like in a partnership and in a household where there's somebody else that's assisting you with, you know. Dealing with the kids, I think you two have to be on the same page,
Yeah.
because it's stressful, right? A lot of times
Mhm.
there may be these like assumptions that, oh, you got it because you've always done it, and if you're
Mm.
the person that's always doing it, you got to speak up if you want
Yeah.
assistance. Not just assume that, like, well, like, why wouldn't they ask me if I need help,
Yeah.
right? So really having that conversation around what it's going to look like, especially if you two are still working,
Hmm.
because it's another layer, that we never experienced, never prepared for.
Hmm.
Typically, if you have school age children, they're in school during the day.
Yeah.
So accept the current norm that we are getting into, and just kind of mentally prepare yourself for it, literally prepare yourself for it, with kind of a schedule. When I say a schedule, around who's going to be the person to kind of help on those days, so that it's not just like, I thought you was going to do it, I thought you was going to do it. Try to be more proactive in that way.
That's good. That's
Mhm.
good. What do you think are probably some creative ways for single parents? And we know have single parents who have support systems, but then also you have some who don't. And that's a whole nother challenge. I think
Yeah.
our society or our government is kind of navigating is since parents are having to um, um, uh, homeschool their kids, but they also have to work. That's going to look different for them. And honestly, I think one option is to despair that things are not going to get better. But there are some things that are within their control that they
Mhm.
probably can help. What are some of those things you think that are within their control that
Yeah.
can help prepare them?
And so, I think with single parents it's a little bit harder,
Mm,
and whether you're single or in a relationship with someone, give yourself grace, right? Give
yeah.
yourself a lot of grace. This is not something that anybody had planned, that was not on anyone's
Hmm.
vision board in 2020. So giving yourself grace. Also, I would highly encourage people to create a routine,
Mm,
around making sure they are caring for themselves. I have 4 kids, a full-time practice. I do a lot of things, but when I wake up in the morning, it's me first. And so if my kids are a little bit older, but if they were younger, does that mean I may lose a little bit of sleep to wake up a little bit earlier before they get up, right?
yeah.
So I got my earbuds in, I might be going for a jog. And if you say, like, well, Celeste, I can't leave like you can be in your home still doing something,
Yes.
popping on a YouTube. I want you to move your body, or listening to something that's inspirational, preparing for the day. Preparation is going to be key for, single parents, for anybody. Preparation. It's because if you fail to plan, you plan to fail, right?
Absolutely.
And we can't utilize the fact that I don't have anyone, because not only do you suffer, but your kids suffer.
Yeah.
And I know no one wants their kids to suffer. And if you end up being in a place of like finding yourself struggling and you're trying to move along, try to, there's something about our system that switches, like our physical system, when we start to have a gratitude mindset. Right. And so start thinking like, okay, my kids are alive. They're safe. They have food on their table, clothes on their back. Maybe they didn't do the lesson plan today. That's okay. Right. Maybe the plan that I had today didn't work out, but they are okay. And I think a lot of times we forget that piece when we're struggling. But I think that that's a good medicine to help us like change up our mindset around the struggles that we have in those moments.
That's good. That's good. This will be a question as it pertains to daily practice, and you've already mentioned some of those: jogging, gratitude. What are some of those other kind of daily practices that parents who may have not implemented any of those practices can say, essentially, as soon as they get off this broadcast tomorrow, they could implement already?
So, I always say, anytime I talk about self-care, people ask me this question about implementing practices and stuff. I want to be raw with the fact that these practices don't work the moment you utilize them, especially if you've never really done them before. You're literally introducing a new system to your toxic system or your dysfunctional system. Whatever you've been doing that has not put yourself first has become a norm. It's comfortably uncomfortable. So even though, as me and James like talks about this way of, creating space for yourself, don't feel bad or don't feel like it's not working. Just know like this is the way it starts. It's not going to feel comfortable. One thing to really work on, trying to change and create new habits, because the same like bad habits we've created, we can change that. If we're still breathing, there's room for change. I would recommend for people to add and implement something to a routine that they're already doing. So for instance, if you're taking a shower every day, try to add like a little shower meditation to your routine. If you're somebody that talks about like, I don't have time, take that vocabulary out of your brain and say like, I need to start creating time. And it could start with like in the shower, brushing your teeth, like feeling the toothpaste on your thing and just kind of thinking about what you have to do today. As you're going to bed, creating like a nighttime routine, that you're like processing your day, preparing for the next day. Boundary setting, right? Everything about self-care is not about things. If anything, the pandemic has taught us is that like we have to really be creative with what we utilize to take care of ourselves. So like boundary setting, paying attention to who you are allowing in your system and not, and what you are doing, like how, and also really our brain really needs structure. So really trying to structure, I'm not saying like 8 o'clock, I have to do this, at 8:10, I have to do this, but have some sense of what you're going to do for the day or for the week. And if it's something you've never done, just plan it day by day, like give yourself grace to try to like create the system that you are trying to do to change and have like more healthier habits.
That's perfect. And this is my last question, as this has really to do with vocabulary. We don't realize how sometimes we really shoot ourselves in the own foot, for lack of better term, about the words that we say. And sometimes, like you said, our words are even on autopilot. We don't even realize what we're saying. And so talk to us a little bit about just the power of the right vocabulary and the right words.
That's something, anybody that's ever, I've worked with a lot of people.
Mhm.
One thing that I hear is how people speak. And if people say something that's negative and they just kind of brush by it, I cringe because I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the way they think about themselves. So, and James talks about this mental tape that takes place like consistently in our lives that we're not aware of. A lot of times with some people, that mental tape can be very negative.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean you grew up in a bad home. It doesn't mean like
Mhm.
there was a lot of trauma. It could have just mean something happened. You had a bad experience. Somebody said no. And instead of you processing that no, you start to internalize it.
Yeah.
Words are important. Be mindful on what you think about yourself. Be mindful on how solution oriented you are. If every time something happens, you consistently change up what you're going to do because you're giving yourself an excuse. Pay attention to those excuses you're giving yourself, especially if you have a goal or a vision, right? Because
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of visions and goals and dreams that are in the graveyard because of that fear or that voice that people aren't paying attention to. Yeah. So our system will continue to play negative noise with our permission or without our permission. So I think about the fact that, you know what, I want to be a part of the process. So I try to live a very intentional life. And if you want to start getting intentional, start being intentional about practicing mindfulness so that you can start understanding like what noise is happening in my head, right?
Yes.
I think that would be important.
Man, this has been like so power packed. You taught us
Thanks.
about normalizing our emotions, acknowledging them. We just talked about this. I'm like, why did my mango blank about our words and that our that internal noise will go on even if we are conscious or unconscious about it, and to shift our vocabulary and practice mindfulness, adding structure to our day, getting up a little bit earlier, and then also having a set routine before we go to bed. So parents, man, we're both parents, so I felt I was like, to a certain degree, I was like, I felt an obligation to have this conversation as it looked like all of us are going to be virtual, and of course, we've seen the many memes making fun, which is a part. I think it to a certain degree is good. The laughter, we can laugh about it.
Absolutely.
But also to really provide some therapeutic insight for parents in our preparation for the new school year. Celeste, if people want to stay in contact with you, how can they do that?
Just go to celestetherapist.com. You can find like all of my information there.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for
having
joining
me
with me tonight. Guys, I'm thankful that you guys have attended our conversation tonight. As Celeste, just gave us some great content and some great strategies to, especially for us as parents, to help us navigate this season that we've never been in. And so if you need extra help, you want to process some of this, obviously James Perkins that help, you can reach out as well. But also you have two amazing therapists here tonight. Take advantage of us. And so until next week, we'll look forward to seeing you and hope you guys have a great evening. Good night.
Bye.